Here is where you can enter your creation to the jam. When submission closes, your creation will be voted on.
When things don't sound the way they should, it can ruin the experience of playing. Don't worry, Cuthbert. The Dreamiverse contains heaps of ready-made sounds for us to use. First, let's switch over to Play Mode and see how it all sounds at the moment. Quiet, isn't it? Doesn't feel quite right. In fact, it's creeping me out, so let's head back into edit mode. Switch over to sound mode so we can start adding some sounds. Find the modes menu. It's inside the assembly menu. As you can see, there are lots of different modes. Each has its own set of tools for doing different things. We're currently in assembly mode. If you select the speaker symbol icon with X, we'll switch to sound mode. That's better. In the next step, we'll start adding sounds to the scene. Okay, the first thing we need to do is to start adding some background sounds. See the button with the magnifying glass in the sound menu? That's the search menu. Select it now to view the different types of sounds you can add. Now select the speaker button to search for sound effects. This is the Dreamiverse, where you can find all the wonderful stuff other dreamers have made. I've already set aside a collection of sound effects for you in here. That's what this collection is. It's bursting with different sound effects for you to play with. Select it with X to open it. I've arranged the sound effects into groups for you. To get a proper overview, use the right stick to zoom in and out of the collection. This group of sound effects are background sounds. You can hear a preview of each sound by hovering over them with your imp. Find something that fits the dreamy atmosphere of the scene. I rather like Dream Space. When you've found a sound you like, select it with X. The sound you selected now appears as a gadget on your imp. You can stamp it into your scene with R2, any place you like. It doesn't matter where you put it because background sounds can be heard everywhere in a scene. Now let's start time with R3 and see how it all sounds. Ah, that's better. Notice how much more alive the scene feels with just that one sound. Imagine how it will feel with even more sound effects. But there's no need to imagine it. You can start adding more now to create a layered and unique ambience. If you want to replace a sound effect, just stamp a different one over it. When you've got things sounding just how you want them, rewind time with L3 and move on to the next step. Background sounds really help to create an immersive atmosphere. But to add sound to a specific object in the scene, you need to use what we call a spot sound. Let's try it out on the fire between the platforms. I'm sure we can find some fire sound effects in the collection. Let's take a look. Select Search Sound Effects from the Sound menu. As we open the tutorial collection in the last step, it's still open when we come back to the Dreamiverse. Isn't that handy? Just what we need, some fire sound effects. Have a listen to some of the fire sounds and pick one you like. Once you've selected it, your imp will be equipped with a spot sound effect. See those rings coming off the gadget? That's the sound's fade zone. The rings show you how the sound fades away as you move further from the source. Let's stamp that sound between the first two platforms. Put it above the fire and see what that sounds like. If you want to see the sound's fade zone, select the gadget with X. Click R3 to listen to the sound effect. You'll notice the sound gets louder the closer you get to it. Aha! You can almost feel that fire. Toasty. As you move away, out of the fade zone, it gets quieter, until eventually you can't hear it at all. You can press the circle button now to deselect the sound effect. Then click L3 to rewind the scene. If you're happy with your spot sound, move on to the next step. Things haven't been that tricky for Connie so far, but the next gap looks a bit too big, even with her mighty jumping skills. Let's fly over to that floating platform using the left and right sticks and get a closer look at it. Looks like there's a trigger zone attached to it. Why don't we switch over to play mode and see what it does? Well, will you look at that? It lights up the platform when Connie steps on it. Lovely. You know what would make it even better, though? If it made a sound as well. So let's switch back to edit mode and make that happen. I've got a feeling you can find something in the tutorial collection to use here. Go to the assembly menu and go back into sound mode. Now go to search and select search sound effects. Over here are some energy sound effects. Have a listen to a few. Pick a sound effect for your light up platform. I quite like the sound of Dream Terminal. See which one you like and select it with X. Now it's time to stamp it in the scene somewhere near the platform. In the next step, I'll show you how to trigger the sound effect. As we've already seen, Background and spot sounds will play constantly when placed in the scene like this. But for the platform, we want the sound to be triggered by Connie. And for that to happen, we need to connect the sound effect to the same trigger zone that activates the glow. Move in closer to the platform using the left and right sticks. Take a good look at the trigger zone gadget. Do you see the output port that says detected when you hover over it? That means it will trigger when it detects a possessed puppet like Connie. So all we need to do to make the sound effect activate when Connie's on the platform is connect the output to the sound effect. Let's do that now. When you select the detected port with R2 or X, you'll see your imp becomes tethered to the port by a wire. Gadgets communicate with each other using wires like this. You'll also notice that a power port has appeared on the bottom of the sound effect gadget. To connect the two gadgets, just hover over that power port and press R2 or X. Time to head into play mode to see how it sounds. When you're ready, switch back to edit mode and start the next step. Oh, I just realized something. We got so caught up with these sound effects, we forgot to add another platform for Connie. She must be getting impatient, so let's sort that out for her. The easiest thing to do would be to clone the platform. Remember how to do that? Just hover over it, hold L1, and press and hold R2. Once the clone has been created, let go of L1, move it to the right spot, then release R2 to place it down. When you clone an object, any gadgets attached to it will come along for the ride. So all you need to do now is to wire the trigger zone on the second platform to the sound effect. Or even better, grab a new sound effect from the collection, just for variety. It's up to you. Dream shapers should always go with their instincts. Whatever you choose to do, move on to the next step when you're ready. All right, there's just one more gap for Connie to cross before she reaches the door. That pink cylinder would make a great stepping stone for her, but it's all the way down in the water. If you take a closer look at it, you'll see there's a trigger zone and a movement sensor on it. They're not connected to anything right now. There's also a keyframe on the platform. I wonder what that does. Try selecting it with X to find out. Just as I thought. It raises the cylinder, so Connie can use it to cross over. Press the circle button to deselect the keyframe. Looks like all we need to do is connect the cylinder's trigger zone to the keyframe, so it moves up when she gets close. And while we're doing that, why not add a sound effect to it as well? Let's jump back into the sound effects collection and see if there's anything appropriate in there. Down here, we've got some mechanical sound effect loops. These are the perfect sound effects for any sort of machinery in a scene. We want something that would go well with a raising platform. I think I'll go for the heavy metal ratchet loop. That sounds good, right? Okay, now select the sound effect of your choice and stamp it near the pink cylinder with R2 or X. In the next step, I'll show you how to connect all of the gadgets. Now we just need to do a little bit of wiring to get everything working. Remember, the trigger zone will activate when it detects Connie, triggering the keyframe to raise the platform. Grab the detected output from the trigger zone with R2 or X. Then stretch the wire to the keyframe gadget and connect it to its power port with R2 or X. Now let's get the sound effect working. This will be triggered by the movement sensor. The movement sensor detects when the object it's attached to is moving. So when the platform starts rising, the movement sensor will send a signal from its output port. That's the output port on the right side of the movement sensor gadget. It's called velocity overall. Press R2 or X over the port to create a wire. You'll need to connect the other end of the wire to the sound effects power port. Once that's done, switch over to play mode to test everything out. So much better. That sound effect really makes a big difference. There's even more you can do to bring this scene to life. See if you can add some sound to the water between the platforms. I think there might be some water sounds in the tutorial collection. Experiment with the different effects as much as you like and see what you can come up with. When you're done, just take Connie through the door in play mode to finish this tutorial. This tutorial is all about making music. Music can make your creations come alive, adding emotion and atmosphere. In Dreams, you can compose whole tracks from scratch and even make your own instruments. But you don't need to be a maestro to start making your own music. I'll show you how to create an arrangement using ready-made music clips. So let's begin. To start making music, we need to switch over to sound mode. Right now, you're in assembly mode. If you're ever unsure of what mode you're in, just hover over the icon in the top left corner to see your current mode and tool. Go to the Assembly menu and open the Modes menu with X. The Modes menu is where you access all the different creation modes. Each mode has its own set of tools and options. The button for Sound mode has a speaker symbol on it. Select it with X. Now you have a new menu at the top of the screen. This is the Sound menu. It contains everything you need to make your own music. In the scene, you'll see a timeline gadget. In the next step, I'll show you how to edit it. Music in Dreams is arranged in timelines. This timeline contains a version of the music you heard at the start of this tutorial. To see what's inside it, we need to open its canvas. Hover your imp over the timeline, hold L1 and press X to open it. It's just like scoping into a group. This is the timeline canvas. The canvas exists within scene space, so if you pull down on the left stick, you'll back away from it. Hold the L1 button and use the left stick to move up and down the timeline. This is the best way to navigate around timelines, especially when they're big. This piece of music is called Connie's theme. To listen to it, just start time by clicking R3. See how the piece is composed of many music clips. The clips power on and off as the playhead passes over them. Click R3 again to pause time. Each music clip is a collection of notes made by an instrument. You can grab them and move them around with your imp. If you want to delete a music clip, hover over it and press the triangle button. Clips can also be cloned by holding L1 when you grab them. You can extend the timeline by hovering over one of its edges and holding X. The edge glows and an arrow icon appears. You can also extend the bottom if you need space for more clips. Once you've finished listening to the piece, click L3 to rewind time. You can find all sorts of different music by searching the Dreamverse. To add music to one of your scenes, you could simply stamp a ready-made timeline, like this one. But in this tutorial, you'll learn how to assemble your own track from ready-made music clips. Move on to the next step and we'll get started. So, let's start making music. It's actually a lot easier than you might think. Close the timeline by selecting the cross button in the top right corner. Or hover over it, hold L1 and press circle to close it. Now delete the timeline by hovering over it with your imp and pressing triangle. Let's add a new music timeline to the scene. Press square to open the sound menu. Select the Music Timeline button in the menu, then stamp one in the scene with R2 or X. Press circle to unequip the timeline gadget from your imp. Open up the timeline canvas with L1 and X. This timeline is empty, ready to be filled with music. The columns on the timeline represent musical bars. This timeline is 8 bars long. We'll need more space than that, so hover over the right edge and grab it with X. Extend the timeline to 16 bars. Now let's add a music clip to the timeline. Press square to open the sound menu. Find the search button and select it with X. Its icon is the magnifying glass. When you search in sound mode, there are 4 options for finding different sounds. Select Search Music Clips with X. This is the Dreamiverse. Here you can find music made by other dream shapers. Well, usually you can, but for this tutorial, I've made a collection of elements for you to use. That's what this cluster is. Select it with X to open it. It contains a selection of music clips, which you can use to build your own arrangements. Use the right stick to zoom in and out, and the left stick to move around. I've grouped the clips into different categories. Let's start with a basic melody. That's this group of clips. Hover over the clips to hear a preview of how they sound. Find one that you like, then select it with X to equip it to your imp. I'm using the clip Nostalgia Bells. Your imp will now be holding a gadget containing your selected clip. If you hover over the timeline, the gadget should snap to the canvas and reveal the whole clip. Place the clip at the start of the timeline and stamp it with R2 or X. Clips on a timeline will snap to the bars and to other clips. This will help you line them up. Click R3 to listen to the timeline. In the next step, we'll build up the track with some more clips. Click L3 to rewind time. Let's build on the melody by adding some chords. Go to the sound menu and select Search Music Clips again. Over here are some chord clips. Hover over the clips to preview them, then select one with X. I'm going with Suspended Pad, but you can make your own choice. Stamp your clip onto a new row of the timeline and snap it to the start. Click R3 to listen and notice how the clips play together in time. Click L3 to rewind. Now let's add some drums. Go back to the sound menu and select Search Music Clips. Find the drum clips in the collection. A drum beat can really change the feel of a track. I love these samba practice drums. Pick a drum clip you like, then stamp it onto the timeline under the melody and chords. Now click R3 to listen to how it sounds. All the clips in the collection are in the same time and key, so you can mix and match them easily. Click L3 to rewind. In the next step, I'll show you how to edit the length of your clips and how to add fades. When you hover over a clip on the timeline, you'll see dotted lines light up at the start and at the end of the clip. Move closer to the timeline so you can see them properly. These are trim handles. We can use them to change the length of a clip. Hover over the handle on the end of the drum clip, then hold R2 to grab it. These clips are loops, so you can extend the clip beyond its original length. All the clips in the collection can be extended in this way. Trim handles are really useful for arranging and remixing. They let you use just a section of a clip without having to edit the music notes inside. On top of the trim handle, you'll see a little coloured gizmo. Move in closer to see it properly. This is a fade handle. You can use it to fade the volume of a clip in or out. It works just like the trim handle. Grab the gizmo with R2 and move your imp left or right to create a fade. Try adding a fade out on the chord clip so it drops off gradually. Drag it out further for a longer fade. Now click R3 to run time. Doesn't that sound cool? You may have noticed that the music stops as soon as the playhead reaches the end of the timeline. In the next step, I'll show you how to make your timeline loop. Now click L3 to rewind. To make the track play constantly in the scene, we need to set the timeline to loop. We can do this in the Timeline's Tweak menu. Hover over a blank area of the timeline, hold L1 and press square to open its Tweak menu. In here, we can change the timeline settings. Find the Playback Mode square to this in the Timeline's Tweak menu. Hover over a blank area of the timeline, hold L1 and press square to open its Tweak menu. In here, we can change the timeline settings. Find the Playback Mode section. There are three options. Once means a timeline will play once all the way through when it's powered on. Sustain means a timeline will pause when it's powered off, then resume once it's powered on. Loop means a timeline will play repeatedly while it's powered on. Hover over the loop icon and press X to change the playback mode. You can also change the playback speed in the Tweak menu. Hover over the playback speed slider and hold X to grab it. Now move your imp to the left or right to adjust the value. Click R3 to hear your adjustments live. You can also adjust the slider by hovering over it and pressing the up or down directional buttons. See how it sounds when it's slowed down or sped up a little. To close the Tweak menu, hover over it, hold L1 and press circle. You can also tweak music clips to make them loop. Just hover over them, hold L1 and press square to open their Tweak menus. You can also change their volume and tempo. Be careful changing the tempo, as your clips could go out of time with the others. We've made a cool piece of music, but you can carry on adding more clips if you want to. Maybe you heard something in a tutorial collection that would sound awesome in your arrangement. Try trimming and looping tracks. See what you can come up with. If you need extra space, you can extend the timeline by grabbing the edges with X. All the clips we've used in this tutorial come from the Media Molecule Music Collection. The collection contains lots of music clips you can use, as well as some complete tracks. Look for it in the Dreamiverse next time you're making music in sound mode. Once you've finished, switch over to Play mode and listen to your track in the scene. To end the tutorial, just press Options and select the Exit Creation button.
Connie and Cuthbert are recording some new tracks for the Dreamiverse. Cuthbert's not exactly a virtuoso, but you don't need to be one to play music in dreams. In this tutorial, you'll learn how to use the performance tools and instruments in sound mode. Then you'll be ready to start making your own original tracks. In the scene, you'll find a timeline. Open it up with L1 and X. Click R3 to give it a listen. It's just a simple drum beat. A nice place to start jamming with other instruments. Click L3 to rewind time. To add another instrument, we need to go to Sound Mode. Go to the Assembly menu and select Modes. Select Sound Mode, the one with the speaker icon, with X. Once in Sound Mode, select the Search button in the Sound menu. It's the one with the magnifying glass icon. In Sound Mode, the Search button has some extra options for searching specific types of sounds. Select the button for Search Instruments. You'll find tons of cool instruments in the Dreamiverse, but for this tutorial, I've made a collection to get started with. Open the collection with X. All of these sounds are instruments that you can play. Hover over any of them for a little preview of what they sound like. Unlike music clips, instruments don't have any music pre-recorded. So the previews you can hear are just to give you an idea of how the instrument sounds. The notes it plays will be down to you. Let's start off by laying down a bass line. Pick any instrument you like from the selection of basses. I'm going for FM classic bass, but creating music is all about personal taste. Once you have an instrument on your imp, hover over the timeline and it'll snap to the canvas. Stamp it onto a new row under Jazz Brush Kit and line it up to the start of the timeline. When you're ready to start jamming with your new instrument, move on to the next step. We now have two instruments on the timeline, but they look a little different. That's because Jazz Brush Kit has music recorded and the FM Classic bass doesn't. To start playing, we need to open the instrument. You can do this by selecting the instrument with X, then the Open Sound button in the context menu. But a quicker way to open it is to use the shortcut L1 and X. Just like we do when opening a microchip or timeline, or scoping into a group. Any sound can be opened this way, even sound effects. This colourful canvas is the sound's freeform view. The imp has undergone a bit of a transformation too. That's because we're performing. If you move your imp off the canvas, the buttons do their normal functions. But when you're hovering over the canvas, your controller buttons can play different notes using the instrument sound. Under your imp, you can see which notes are played by each button. The notes on the right are played by the action buttons. And the ones on the left are played by the directional buttons. These colourful spots on the canvas aren't just for decoration, they are effect fields. See what happens when you play notes while hovering over one of these spots. Effect fields can drastically change the sound of the instrument. With most effect fields, the effect is strongest in the middle and fades off to the edges. Different instruments have different effect fields. You can even edit and customize the fields to create your own version of the instrument. Let's not get too carried away with the possibilities just yet, though. First, get comfortable playing notes on the canvas. Try out all the effect fields and see if you can play a simple tune. Nothing is being recorded yet, so you're free to go wild. In the next step, we'll explore other ways of using freeform view. Now you've got a feel for performing in freeform view, let's look at some other features of it. In the context menu, find the button called Stop Performing. If you select this, your imp and controls will return to their normal functions, and you won't be able to play notes on the canvas. You can also stop performing by holding L1 and pressing circle when hovering over the canvas. The effect fields are now shown as gadgets. You can grab them with R2 to move them around, or tweak them with L1 and square. To go back to performing with the imp, just select the Start Performing button in the context menu. Or use L1 and X on the canvas. Try pressing the buttons in this order: X, square, triangle, circle, down, left, up, right. This progression of notes is called a scale. To be specific, this is the C minor pentatonic scale. Sounds fancy, doesn't it? You can change the scale by holding down R1 over the canvas. With R1 held, use the left stick to select a different key. The right stick is used to choose different scales in that key. Release R1 once you've made your choice, and the instrument will now play to the scale you chose. Different scales have different feels, so you can make your music sound happy or sad, bluesy or folksy, or just plain old avant-garde. You can play in whatever scale and key you want to, but it's usually a good idea to stick to that choice for the entire song. Explore the different keys and scales. You don't need to be a music theory expert to understand them. Just use your ear and listen to how they sound. But if you want to follow along exactly with this tutorial, then stick to C minor pentatonic. Hold R1 and use the left stick to select C. Then use the right stick to select the additional category, then the minor pentatonic scale. Now we know how to perform using freeform view, I think we should try recording something. Move on to the next step when you're ready. Okay, now you've had some time to practice, let's try recording something. For your first try, we'll keep things simple, so try playing this sequence. X, 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 square, square, triangle, triangle. To help us play in time, we can use the metronome. If you look to the top left corner of the canvas, you'll find a couple of buttons. The first one is the metronome. Select it with X to turn it on. This will add a useful click track, which can help you play in time when recording. Next to the metronome is the Count In button. When this option is turned on, you'll have a 4-beat count-in before recording starts, so you have a moment to prepare. In the context menu, you'll find a button with a record icon. Select this button when you want to start recording. After the count-in, the timeline will start playing and the canvas will record your performance. When you're ready, give it a go. When the playhead reaches the end of the timeline, it'll stop. You'll still be able to play notes on the canvas, but none of them will be recorded. When you've finished performing, select the Stop Recording button in the context menu. Play back your recording with R3. See how the notes appear on the canvas as colourful strokes. If you view the canvas from the side, you can see your performance in 3D. As this was your first try, you might have made a few mistakes, but don't worry about it. In the next step, we'll be having another go. So rewind with L3 and move on when you're ready. A lot of performing music comes down to practice and repetition. So let's try recording that bass line again. But the canvas now has your first performance recorded to it. If you click R3, you can see the notes you played appear as colourful strokes on the canvas. Before we try again, we need to clear the first performance. If it was the last thing you did, you could just hover away from the canvas and press the left button to undo. But if it wasn't, you need to select the Delete All button in the top left of the canvas. It's red with a cross on it. This will delete all the notes recorded with the instrument. So let's have another try. Make sure you have the metronome and count-in selected, and that you've rewound time. If you're feeling confident, try elaborating on the bass line or using some effect fields. When you're ready, start recording. But instead of using the button in the context menu, try this shortcut. Click the L3 and R3 buttons together at the same time to start recording. To stop recording, just click L3 and R3 together again. Now play back your recording and see how it sounds. If you want another go, just select the Delete All button again and give it another whirl. Click L3 and R3 together to start and stop recording. Once you've recorded a bass you're happy with, rewind time and move on to the next step.